One of the most amazing features on our Line 6 Helix and HX Stomp is the ability to utilize snapshots. They can be such a powerful tool to create these little captures in time of all of our settings and to be able to seamlessly switch between them. Well, with the release of the new Metallurgy line of plugins, I've already had some questions from some folks as to how we could go about possibly implementing something like snapshots in it. Obviously, it doesn't come with that feature of snapshots. So can we add it to it? Can we do this? Well, the answer is yes. And how do we accomplish it? Well, we accomplish that through Midi. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how you can set up the Metallurgy standalone plugins to be controlled via Midi to have expression pedal control, to have snapshot style control, and to bypass and engage effects. I am going to be using a product from the fine folks over at Morningstar, and this is their absolutely amazing MC6 Mark II MIDI controller. In my opinion, the finest on the market. I also have their flagship MC8 controller. Absolutely amazing stuff. I love Ben and James over at Morningstar. I really believe in their products. Absolutely amazing. Great folks to deal with. So I'm going to be using that, and I would recommend, if you are looking for a MIDI controller to control Metallurgy or anything else, to really take a good hard look over at the folks at Morningstar. So without further ado, let's dive right in and take a look at how we can accomplish what we need to by controlling Metallurgy via Midi. And I think you're going to be pretty impressed with how simple it is. Okay, so here we are over at the Morningstar MIDI editor, and I have that open, and I also have an instance of Line 6 Metallurgy Thrash open. The reason I use this one in particular is because it has a wah pedal, and along with showing you how to control a lot of the common functions via Midi, I also want to show you how you can control the wah pedal using an expression pedal. So my setup is this. I have my Morningstar MC6 Mark II with a Mission Engineering standard expression pedal plugged into it. I have the Morningstar MIDI controller set up in the settings here on the Omni ports to be used as expression pedals. So first things first, we need to make sure that our Morningstar MC6 MIDI controller, or whatever MIDI controller we're using, is talking to whatever Metallurgy plugin we're using. Now, a little side note is I have a MIDI cable coming out of the MIDI output of my MC6 Mark II going into my Focusrite audio interface. So we want the MIDI to enter Metallurgy Thrash via the Focusrite interface. And the way we do that is we go up to our file menu, we hit preferences, and you'll see right here, I have obviously my audio device set as Focusrite USB ASIO, since that's the audio interface that I want to use to play around with this, but I also set my MIDI input device to the same. So that should be talking to one another. So first things first, what I want to do is I have 6 buttons on my MC6, and I want to be able to set it up kind of like the Helix can be set up in kind of a pedal board / snapshot mode. So I'm going to show you how we can set it to, so let's say, have the bottom 3 switches turn on and off certain effects, put them in and out of their bypass state. And then I'll do the top 3 rows to set up kind of a pseudo snapshot situation. And then we'll also do the expression pedal. So let's start off like this. If you'll notice, I can hit my Morningstar MC6, and as I hit the different buttons, it goes to our different presets. So let's start with our first button, our lowest left corner, and we're going to have it turn off and on the Pillars overdrive. So I'll just name the little preset Pillars, and when I do that and save it, what happens is up on my screen here on the Morningstar MC6, it says Pillars. So I know that that's, in my head, that's going to turn on and off the Pillars overdrive. So how do we go about setting this? Well, first things first, we're going to set up the Morningstar MIDI editor to send the proper messages to Metallurgy Thrash. So I'm going to come in here in message 1, and you can see we have 16 messages we can use. I'm going to say when I press that button, I want to send a CC message or a control change message over to Metallurgy Thrash. Now, I'm just going to start with CC number 0. And now we have these values here. So what's going to happen is, in the case of turning an effect on and off, you're going to use values from 0, I believe, up to either 62 or 63. Let's say 62 to be safe, is going to turn the effect off, and anything from, let's say, 64 up to 127 is going to turn it on. It doesn't really matter about those middle numbers because I just simply use 0 is off, 127 is on, and that keeps it very clear in my mind. So we're going to say, let's use this to turn it off. So what happens if I save this preset? Now I have to come over and assign that to the appropriate place over in Metallurgy Thrash. So I come up to my MIDI Learn button. Now what happens when I press that you will see the user interface goes dark and it highlights certain points. Now, all of these points that I can hover over that get highlighted are the different things that I can control via MIDI. So all these parameters up here are noise reduction, our capo, focus filter, etc. If we do the same thing on the amp page, you see all the things that we can MIDI control. Unfortunately, one little disappointment for me was that we can't control the channel switching, which would have been kind of nice and does limit us a little bit in this idea of using snapshots, but we were going to have to work around that. Even over to the cab room, look at all the things we can control. We can have our EQ, we can have the different various controls, solo and mute, and our volumes for each different mic. We can't actually control the mics. And then obviously on our post effects, we can control a lot too. But let's go back to our pre-effects. So we do this. I select what I want to control, and we want to be able to turn the pillars overdrive on and off. So I'm going to select that. Now what happens when I press this button I just assigned on my MC6, it sends the appropriate message and tells Metallurgy Thrash that we want to assign control change 0 to the bypass switch of the pillars overdrive. So now if I come out of this, you'll see that if I press it now, it's not going to do anything because it's turning it off. But if I engage it manually and then press the button, it's going to turn it off. So it's working just as expected, but this isn't doing us any good because we need to turn it back on. So coming back over to the Morningstar editor, there's a really cool mode on here called toggle mode. So if I turn that on, now that's going to toggle between two states of MIDI or two settings of MIDI. So we can come down to message 2. Now a really cool way to do this really quickly is I can just copy this message and then paste it down here. Now, obviously, it's just going to do the same thing, but I need to change that CC value to the 127 setting to turn this back on, and then I'm going to hit save. Now, we want to keep the CC number the same because we've assigned that to 0 over here. Now, one other thing is position. Right now, this is talking about both toggle modes. So I want to say, let's do position 1 for message 1 and position 2 for message 2. Now what this will do is when I hit the button once, it toggles between position 1, hit it again, it's going to toggle to position 2. Now by saving this preset, I should hit that button and turn the effect on and off. And you see it's doing just that. So I now have full control over my pillars overdrive pedal. Now let's say we wanted to do the same thing for the Stupor OD. Well, what we have to do, again, is go through the same setup. We don't want to do it on that button, but let's go to our second button. Before we do, though, I'm going to copy this whole preset, though, for the simple reason that I can just come over here to my preset B and paste that. And instead of having to go through the entire setup again, I can just make the changes I need. I've got toggle mode on. I've got my CC values set to turn on and off. All I'm going to do is change my CC number to a different one, so it's not going to send the message to the pillars anymore. And I'll come up here and name this one Stupor. And it's that simple. Now we should be set to turn this on and off once we assign it. So we come back over to MIDI Learn. Here's our bypass button. I hit that, and I hit the second button. And now we've assigned CC1 to the Stupor OD. Now, if we didn't want that and that was a mistake, we can just hit the little X button. It goes away, right? And we can reassign it. So we come out of that. Now, right away, this should be set up to turn that on and off very simply. What if we had a situation where we wanted to maybe turn both of those on and off on one foot switch? Well, we could easily do that. Again, let's copy this. Let's go to a third foot switch, and we'll paste that. Now, I'm going to just name this both because we want to toggle both on and off. So I've already got it set here to turn on and off the Stupor overdrive. But now we could just simply copy and paste each of these, change these numbers back to 0, which was the assignment for the pillars. And now that I've done that, when I hit this button, you'll notice that both of these pedals turn on and off. And we can do as much of this as we can fill in the messages on the Morningstar MC6 Mark II. Okay, let's just clear that out. We don't necessarily need that. Now let's talk about the expression pedal. As I said, I've already set up the expression pedal with my Morningstar MC6. It's down on the floor over here. So what we're going to do, same old thing. We're going to move our expression pedal. Excuse me 1 second while I reach over to that. And you'll notice that Morningstar MIDI editor changed over to control expression pedal 2. Wonderful. We come to MIDI learn again. We now click our wah pedal within Metallurgy Thrash. And I want to set my CC number to something we haven't used. So we have CC0 and CC1. Let's change that to number 3. Save that. I'm going to go move my MIDI pedal now so it can learn. And it's that simple. It's assigned to CC3. Now watch what happens when I get out of MIDI learn mode and move my expression pedal. Watch the on screen here for our line 6 wah pedal. It moves beautifully. Now, let's say we wanted a different range for it. Let's say we just wanted it to move from, somewhere around 20 up to 100 so that it doesn't move in its full range. Now, we've changed the range of the expression pedal, so it's going to control this in a narrower range. So it works beautifully for that. So really simply, we could go and do this for the post effects as well, right? If I wanted to control this vintage delay, it's so simple. We can come back to our first on off of the pillars. We can copy that, go to our third switch, paste that in there, call this delay. And once you get good at this, you can do it very quickly. We're going to pick a CC number, a new CC number, number 4, which we haven't used. We assign both of those to number 4. We've already set up the toggle mode on and off in the position. We turn our MIDI learn on within Metallurgy. We click the bypass button and we press that. And now that's assigned to CC4, and you'll notice that that now turns on and off. And I could have all of these turning on and off together by assigning them all to one switch, or I could have them independent. It really depends on our needs, but it's very easy to do. Now, how about this idea of utilizing the quote unquote snapshots? Well, let's do this. Let's go set some of this up. So we're going to use our empty preset D up on the top to set up snapshot 1, let's call it. So let's say on our gain channel that I want this gain to be down around 2. Okay, well, I need to assign this to be controlled via MIDI. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to name this, we'll call it Snap 1. And again, up on my little display here actually shows the name Snap 1, so I know what I'm pressing on my Morningstar Engineering MC6. Now again, I'm going to want a press action and some more control change messages. Let's go up to CC numbers we haven't used. We'll go up to number 6. And if you ever forget what you did use already, you can go back over, hit the MIDI learner. Let's see here, we've used 0, 1, we've used 3, and we've used 4. So, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of them to go around, so we're going to be okay with that. So let's go to CC number 6. Now the value is interesting here. MIDI values run from 0 to 127. So when we divide that out on something like this that goes from 0 to 10, we would divide those 128 numbers basically from 0 to 127 by 10. So it's a value of 12.8 for every incremental 1 movement we want to do here. So let's check this out. Let's start here and say a value of 13, and we'll save that. Then we'll assign this over to our gain function. So I'm going to press that button, and you'll notice I have CC number 6, so that's now assigned to CC number 6. Now, no matter what I do with this, if I put that to 10 and now I press the button, you'll see it returns to 1. So wherever I am, it's going to return back to 1. If I come back over here and go to a CC value of 26, it should get us in the ballpark of 2. Now, yeah. If I keep adding 13 to this, it gets us in the ballpark, but eventually the math goes off a little bit because of the decimal point, right? So now we get to, you see 3.1, so it's probably like a setting of 38 that's going to get us back to 3, right? And then we'd add 13 to that, and we'd get up to 51. So it's a bit of math involved in thinking to get these where we want. Obviously around 63 3 is going to be roughly the midway point, right? So 5. So you see that we can have this in our head. If we think of dividing things by 13 and then adjusting a little bit, we can get this really close really quick. So let's say we want it on 2. I'm going to go back and I'm going to assign this a value of 26 and I save it. And now every time I hit that button, that gain is going to go back to 2. But let's say I also at the same time want the drive control to go up to say 7 area, right? I would set up another message, and I can just copy this, paste it down here, but change this to a new CC number of 7, let's say, and change this to a value. What did I say? I want that to 7. So 70, 91-ish, go 91 roughly, and save that preset, come to my Midi Learn, hit the drive control, hit my button, and it assigns that new CC number 7 to this particular parameter. Now when I hit this, this should jump up to around, let's see what happens if I move it down. You'll notice now. So if I move both of these to opposite ends, I press that button, this jumps to 2, this jumps to 7.2. Now I wanted 7, so I could come over here and I could tweak that by a couple and just keep playing around until I get it right on 7, and there you go. If it's that important, 7.2 is probably not going to be a huge difference. But if it is, we can change that around. So let's say at the same time as that, we also want the base to go down to nothing, to 0, let's say. So again, I can copy one of these messages, paste it here, since we've already done the work, set up a new CC number. CC value said we want it to go down to 0. Now I save the preset. I come over here to Midi Learn, and when I select this, press this button, it's going to assign CC8 to it. Turn this off, and you're going to notice now if my base is up, so I can mess all these controls around. When I press that button, they instantly go back to what I have programmed. Let's say that's fine for that particular snapshot. Well, let's say now that we want to still control those things, but we want to add more gain to, say, snapshot number 2. I can take this entire message that I just saved over here, copy it, move over to our next preset, paste it, and we'll call this snapshot 2. I've already got all my parameters assigned. I just got to change the values. So let's say I want the gain now to come somewhere up around 59, and I want this drive control to actually come down somewhat, and then I want the base to move up a bit, and I save that. Now you'll notice that when I hit this button, all of those parameters change. There's snapshot 1, there's snapshot 2. Now, obviously, we would have to tweak these to the settings that we actually want, but you see how seamless this is. Now, let's say on snapshot 2, we also wanted to engage the vintage digital delay. So what we could do is we could come down here. We already have that assigned to CC number 4, so I could create a new message over here. When I press Control change number 4, if I want it to turn on, I would want to go to 127, right? I'd save that. Now when I hit this button, you see it engages this. Now here's the problem with this. When I go back to snapshot 1, it doesn't turn this off. So if we wanted this to be in the off state on snapshot 1, but in the on state on snapshot 2, we're going to have to program this to turn off when we go back to snapshot 1. So I could simply come to this preset, copy this message that I just made, move to this preset, paste it right here, and instead of the value of 127 to turn it on, I come down to a value of 0 and turn it off. Now when I press that button, it turns off. When I press snapshot 2, on. Snapshot 1 is off. And all of those settings retain as well. And we can do this as much as we want. I could come over here and add in, control of, on snapshot 2, I want the pillars overdrive to go on. So that's CC 0. So I could just copy this message, paste it in here, go back to our CC of 0, and I said I want that turned on with a value of 127. Right now, when I press snapshot 1, along with all my other parameters working, the pillars goes on, but now on snapshot 2, it won't go off. So I need to come over to snapshot 2, copy this, paste it, and I'm going to have it turn off when I go to snapshot 2, and now that's working. Snapshot 2, snapshot 1, snapshot 2, snapshot 1, snapshot 2, snapshot 1, snapshot 2, snapshot 1. So everything is working seamlessly. So it is a little bit of programming, and it isn't endless, obviously. We do have a limit of messages we can send, but at the same time, we can get control over a fairly large number of parameters, and it works seamlessly and beautifully. So it's a bit of work to set it up. Not so bad if you're using the copy and paste function in the Morningstar MIDI editor. But there we have it. Snapshots, bypassing effects, using the expression pedal. Really, really handy stuff. Now, one other use of the expression pedal could also be this. If I come over and just unassign it to our wah pedal, what if we wanted to control maybe our gain? So I could come over here and let's unassign gain from that. But now let's try and have the gain controlled by the expression pedal. So I'm in MIDI learn mode. I'm going to click that. I'm going to move my expression pedal. Now you'll see that we have a range here, let's say from 20 to 100 like we had before. Now when I move my expression pedal, it should move the gain up and down between these two settings. And it does just that. So that's even yet another use. So we can see just how powerful this can be. All right, so there you have it. I was very impressed when I dove into this and started messing around with it, realizing just how powerful it can be. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope that that turns out to be a helpful video for some who are hoping to be able to control Metallurgy standalone via MIDI. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some use out of watching it, and also subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.